What if I told you that someone in your life systematically erases your memories and replaces them with lies? As you watch this video, your personal history might be under attack. The conversations you remember having, the promises that were made to you, the abuse you experienced. Someone might be convincing you that none of it happened the way you remember. In 30 minutes, I will reveal the 9 most powerful documentation techniques to save your sanity from memory manipulation. These aren't just note-taking tips. They're psychological warfare defense strategies that can protect your mind from those who would steal your memories and rewrite your history. Welcome back to Shadow Psyche, where we expose the daily dark psychology tactics used against you and teach you how to protect yourself. I'm Brian, and over the past 15 years, I've studied how manipulators don't just control your present. They systematically rewrite your past to control your future. Today, I will reveal the 9 most effective documentation techniques to protect your memories from being stolen and manipulated. These techniques have helped thousands of people maintain their grip on reality when others tried to convince them they were losing their minds. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to create an unbreakable record of your experiences, understand why documentation is your most potent weapon against memory manipulation, and have concrete tools to protect your personal history from being rewritten by others. But first, let me be clear. This information is for protection only. We're not teaching you how to spy on others, but how to protect your memories and experiences from those who would steal them. The Notebook Salvation Story. Let me tell you about Emma, a marketing executive who came to me after what she described as nearly losing her mind to a memory thief. For 3 years, she'd been in a relationship with someone who had systematically convinced her that her memories were unreliable, her perceptions were wrong, and her emotional responses were inappropriate. I started to believe I was going crazy, Emma told me. He would deny conversations we'd had, insist he'd never made promises he'd made, and convince me that my reactions to his behavior were signs of my mental instability. But Emma had one thing that saved her sanity: a small notebook she'd started keeping 6 months into the relationship. Initially, she'd used it to track work projects, but she began writing down personal interactions when she noticed she was constantly confused after conversations with her partner. "That notebook became my lifeline," she said. "When he would deny saying something, I could check my notes and see that I wasn't crazy. When he tried to convince me that I was overreacting, I could read my own words describing exactly what had happened and how I'd felt at the time." Emma's notebook didn't just save her sanity. It gave her the evidence she needed to recognize the systematic manipulation and find the strength to leave. That single notebook proved that her memories were real, her perceptions were accurate, and her sanity was intact. The science of memory vulnerability. Before diving into the 9 documentation techniques, you must understand why your memories are so vulnerable to manipulation. This isn't about having a bad memory. It's about how human memory works and how manipulators exploit these natural processes. Memory isn't like a video recording that plays back exactly what happened. Your brain reconstructs that memory using available information every time you remember something. This reconstruction process is where memory manipulation becomes possible. When someone provides false information during reconstruction, your brain can incorporate it into the memory. Research shows that memories are most vulnerable during 3 critical periods: during the initial encoding, when the event is happening; during storage, when the memory is being consolidated; and during retrieval, when you're trying to remember what happened. Manipulators understand these vulnerability windows and exploit them systematically. The hippocampus, which processes memories, is particularly susceptible to stress and emotional manipulation, precisely the conditions that abusers create. When stressed, confused, or emotionally overwhelmed, your brain's ability to form and retrieve accurate memories becomes compromised. The most important thing to understand is that false memories can feel more real than actual memories because they're often created with strong emotional content and repeated reinforcement. Your brain cannot distinguish between a memory that happened and one skillfully implanted through manipulation. This is why documentation is crucial. It creates external validation for your internal experiences that memory manipulation techniques can't alter. The real-time recording system. The first documentation technique is the real-time recording system, capturing experiences as they happen before memory distortion can occur. This technique recognizes that the most accurate records are created during or immediately after events, when details are fresh and emotions are authentic. The real-time recording system involves multiple methods of immediate documentation. Voice memos recorded during or right after significant conversations, text messages sent to yourself with key details, quick notes in your phone or notebook, and even photographs of relevant documents or situations when appropriate. The key is to capture what happened and how you felt about what happened. Your emotional responses are more complex to manipulate than factual details, so recording your immediate emotional reactions creates a powerful anchor to reality. Here's how this worked for a client named Michael. His supervisor systematically undermined his confidence through subtle manipulation during one-on-one meetings. Michael started recording voice memos immediately after each meeting, describing what was said and how it made him feel. Within 2 weeks, Michael had clear evidence of a pattern. His supervisor would make commitments during meetings, then later deny making those commitments. She would criticize his work using vague, subjective language that made him question his competence, then act surprised when he seemed defensive or insecure. The real-time recordings captured the facts of what happened and Michael's authentic emotional responses before they could be questioned or invalidated. This documentation gave him the confidence to recognize the manipulation and take appropriate action. Protection strategy. Start carrying a small notebook or use your phone's note-taking app. After any significant interaction, especially those that leave you confused or upset, immediately record what happened and how you felt. Don't worry about perfect grammar or complete sentences. Capture the essential details while they're fresh. The digital evidence archive. The second technique is the digital evidence archive, systematically collecting and preserving electronic communications that can objectively prove what happened. This technique recognizes that digital communications create permanent records much harder to manipulate or deny than verbal conversations. The digital evidence archive saves text messages, emails, social media interactions, voice messages, and screenshots of essential conversations or posts. The key is to preserve these communications in their original form, with timestamps and context intact. Modern manipulators understand that digital communications create evidence, so they often try to avoid leaving digital trails. They might insist on phone calls instead of texts, delete messages after sending them, or use disappearing message features. When someone consistently avoids creating digital records, that's often a red flag that they're planning to deny or distort what they're saying. I worked with a woman named Sarah whose business partner was systematically cheating her out of profits while denying any wrongdoing. The partner was careful to discuss financial matters only in person or over the phone, never in writing. However, Sarah started creating her digital records by sending follow-up emails after every conversation. Just to confirm our discussion today, Sarah would write. You agreed to transfer $5,000 from the business account to cover my expenses, and you said you'd have the quarterly reports ready by Friday. If the partner didn't correct these summaries, they became evidence of the agreements. If the partner did fix them, a written record of what was agreed upon would be created. The digital evidence archive also includes creating digital backups of important documents, contracts, and agreements. Store these in multiple locations: cloud storage, external drives, and even printed copies in secure locations. Protection strategy. Screenshot meaningful text conversations, save significant emails in a dedicated folder, and create follow-up emails summarizing meaningful verbal discussions. Use cloud storage to back up your digital evidence, and consider sharing copies with a trusted friend or family member for additional security. The Witness Network Protocol. The third technique is the Witness Network Protocol, strategically involving neutral third parties who can validate your experiences and serve as independent sources of verification. This technique recognizes that manipulators often try to isolate their victims and become their only source of truth about what happened. The Witness Network Protocol involves identifying trustworthy people who can observe interactions, validate your perceptions, and serve as reality checks when you're questioning your own experiences. These witnesses don't need to be formally involved. They must be present and paying attention during key interactions. Effective witnesses include trusted friends or family members who know you well, colleagues who work with you regularly, neighbors who observe your daily life, and professionals like therapists, doctors, or lawyers who interact with you in official capacities. The key is to have witnesses independent of the manipulator and have no reason to support their narrative over yours. Manipulators often try to corrupt potential witnesses by sharing their version of events first, so it's essential to maintain relationships with people who know you independently. Here's how this worked for a client named David. His mother systematically undermined his sibling relationship through manipulation and false accusations. She would tell each sibling different stories about what David had supposedly said or done, creating conflict and isolation. David started including neutral witnesses in family interactions whenever possible. He would invite his girlfriend to family dinners, include his best friend in family activities, and even record some family conversations with permission. These witnesses could validate that David's behavior was normal and appropriate, contradicting his mother's claims that he was unstable or aggressive. The Witness Network Protocol also includes reality checking, regularly discussing your experiences with trusted people who can provide objective perspectives on whether your perceptions and reactions are reasonable. Protection strategy. Identify 3 to 5 people who know you well and can serve as reality checks when questioning your perceptions. Include neutral witnesses in meaningful interactions when possible, and regularly discuss your experiences with trusted friends or family members who can provide objective perspectives. The behavioral pattern mapping. The fourth technique is behavioral pattern mapping, which systematically tracks and documents manipulative behavior patterns over time. This technique recognizes that manipulation rarely occurs in isolated incidents. It typically follows predictable patterns that become clear when documented systematically. Behavioral pattern mapping involves creating detailed records of manipulative behaviors, including the triggers that seem to provoke them, the specific tactics used, the timing and frequency of incidents, and the outcomes or effects of each incident. The power of pattern mapping is that it reveals the systematic nature of manipulation that might not be obvious from individual incidents. A single incident might seem minor or ambiguous, but when you document multiple incidents over time, clear patterns of abuse and manipulation emerge. I worked with a client named Lisa, whose husband used a predictable cycle of manipulation that became obvious only when mapped over time. The pattern included love bombing after arguments, gradual escalation of controlling behavior, explosive anger when challenged, followed by apologies and promises to change, then a return to controlling behavior. Lisa's pattern map showed that this cycle was repeated consistently every 3-4 weeks. The love bombing phase lasted about a week. The controlling behavior gradually increased over 2 weeks. The explosive incident occurred predictably when Lisa tried to assert independence, and the apology phase lasted long enough to prevent Lisa from leaving. Seeing this pattern documented over 6 months gave Lisa the clarity she needed to recognize that her husband's behavior wasn't random emotional outbursts. It was a systematic pattern of control designed to keep her trapped in the relationship. Behavioral pattern mapping also helps identify your triggers and vulnerabilities. You can develop better defenses and early warning systems by tracking when and how you're most susceptible to manipulation. Protection strategy. Create a simple chart or spreadsheet to track manipulative behaviors. Include columns for date, trigger event, manipulative tactic used, your response, and the outcome. Review your patterns weekly to identify trends and develop better protection strategies. The emotional state documentation. The fifth technique is emotional state documentation, which systematically records your emotional responses and mental state to create a baseline for your normal psychological functioning. This technique is crucial because manipulators often attack your emotional reactions, trying to convince you that your feelings are inappropriate, excessive, or signs of mental instability. Emotional state documentation involves regularly tracking your moods, energy, sleep patterns, anxiety, and overall mental health. This creates a record of your standard emotional patterns that can't be disputed or manipulated by others. The documentation should include your emotional state and the circumstances that influenced it. This helps you distinguish between appropriate emotional responses to difficult situations and inappropriate emotional reactions that might indicate manipulation or other problems. Here's why this is so important. Manipulators often use what I call emotional invalidation. They tell you that your emotional responses are wrong, excessive, or signs that you're too sensitive or mentally unstable. When you have documented evidence of your standard emotional patterns, you can see whether your current responses are unusual or normal reactions to abnormal treatment. I worked with Robert, whose boss systematically created a hostile work environment while convincing him that his stress responses were signs of poor performance and inability to handle responsibility. Robert started tracking his emotional state daily, including his stress levels, sleep quality, and overall mood. The documentation revealed that Robert's stress levels were directly correlated with specific interactions with his boss, while his emotional state remained stable during other work activities and personal time. This evidence helped Robert realize that his emotional responses were appropriate reactions to workplace harassment, not signs of personal weakness or mental health problems. Emotional state documentation also helps you recognize the long-term effects of manipulation on your mental health. Chronic manipulation can cause depression, anxiety, and other psychological symptoms that manipulators then use as evidence that you're mentally unstable. Protection strategy. Keep a daily emotional state log for at least 1 month. Rate your mood, energy level, anxiety, and sleep quality on a scale of 1 to 10. Note any significant events or interactions that might have influenced your emotional state. This baseline will help you recognize when your emotional responses are manipulated or invalidated. The legal documentation standard. The sixth technique is the legal documentation standard, creating records that meet the standards required for legal proceedings, even if you never intend to use them in court. This technique ensures that your documentation is thorough, accurate, and credible enough to withstand scrutiny. Legal documentation standard involves following specific protocols for creating and maintaining records, dating and timing all entries, using objective language rather than emotional interpretations, including specific details and direct quotes when possible, and maintaining consistent documentation practices over time. The standard also includes proper storage and backup procedures to ensure your documentation isn't lost, destroyed, or tampered with. This means keeping multiple copies in different locations, using secure storage methods, and creating regular backups of digital records. Even if you never use your documentation in legal proceedings, following legal standards makes your records more credible and harder to dismiss or invalidate. When someone tries to convince you that your memories are unreliable, you have documentation that meets professional standards for accuracy and reliability. I worked with a woman named Jennifer, whose ex-husband was systematically harassing her in violation of a restraining order. Jennifer followed legal documentation standards for recording each violation. She noted the exact date and time, described the specific behavior objectively, included any witnesses present, and documented her immediate response to each incident. When Jennifer finally returned to court, her documentation was so thorough and professional that the judge immediately recognized the pattern of harassment and imposed additional penalties on her ex-husband. The legal standard documentation gave Jennifer's experiences credibility that emotional descriptions alone couldn't provide. Legal documentation standard also includes understanding what types of evidence are most valuable. Contemporaneous records, created at the time of events. Corroborating evidence, multiple sources confirming the same facts. And objective evidence, facts rather than interpretations. Protection strategy. Learn basic legal documentation practices. Always include dates and times. Use objective language, quote directly when possible, and maintain consistent records. Store your documentation securely with multiple backups, and consider having vital records notarized or witnessed to establish their authenticity. The memory anchor system. The seventh technique is the memory anchor system, creating multiple records that reinforce and validate each other to develop unshakable evidence of your experiences. This technique recognizes that single sources of documentation can be questioned or dismissed, but multiple corroborating sources create undeniable proof. The memory anchor system combines different types of documentation: written records, audio recordings, digital communications, witness statements, and physical evidence when available. Each anchor reinforces the others, creating a comprehensive record that's virtually impossible to manipulate or deny. The system creates redundancy. The same events are documented through multiple methods, so the others remain intact, even if one type of record is questioned or compromised. This redundancy also helps you remember details more accurately, as different types of records can trigger other aspects of your memory. Here's how this worked for a client named Mark. His business partner was systematically stealing from their company while gaslighting Mark about the financial discrepancies. Mark created multiple memory anchors for each suspicious incident. He wrote detailed notes in his journal, sent himself emails summarizing financial meetings, recorded voice memos describing his concerns, and photographed relevant documents. When Mark's partner tried to deny the theft and convince Mark that he was paranoid about money, Mark had multiple sources of evidence that corroborated his concerns. The written notes showed his consistent worries over time. The emails provided timestamps and specific details. The voice recordings captured his emotional state. and the photographs provided objective evidence of the financial discrepancies. The memory anchor system also includes cross-referencing, regularly reviewing your different types of documentation to ensure they're consistent and complete. This process helps you identify gaps in your records and strengthens your overall documentation. Protection strategy. Create at least 3 types of documentation for essential events or ongoing situations. Combine written notes with digital records, audio recordings, and witness statements when possible. Regularly review your different records to ensure they're consistent and complete. The secure storage protocol. The 8th technique is the secure storage protocol, protecting your documentation from being discovered, accessed, or destroyed by those who would manipulate your memories. This technique recognizes that documentation is only valuable if it remains secure and accessible when needed. Secure storage protocol involves multiple layers of protection: physical security for written records, digital security for electronic files, backup systems to prevent loss, and access controls to prevent unauthorized viewing or tampering. Physical security includes storing written records in locked containers, safety deposit boxes, or with trusted friends or family members. Digital security involves password protection, encryption, and secure cloud storage services. Backup systems ensure that your records remain safe even if one storage method fails. The protocol also includes compartmentalization, storing different types of records in various locations so that no single person or incident can compromise all your documentation. This might mean keeping written notes at home, digital files in cloud storage, and backup copies with a trusted friend. Access controls are critical if you're living with or closely connected to the person manipulating your memories. Your documentation must be completely inaccessible to them, or they may try to destroy, alter, or use your records against you. Protection strategy. Never store all your documentation in one location. Use a combination of physical and digital storage with multiple backup copies. Use secure cloud storage services, safety deposit boxes, or trusted friends for backup storage. Always password protect digital files and consider encryption for highly sensitive records. The documentation review system. The 9th and final technique is the documentation review system, regularly analyzing your records to identify patterns, validate your perceptions, and strengthen your understanding of what's happening. This technique transforms your documentation from passive record-keeping into active reality testing. The documentation review system involves scheduled reviews of your records, daily reviews of recent events, weekly reviews of patterns and trends, monthly reviews of long-term developments, and quarterly reviews of your overall situation and progress. During these reviews, you look for patterns in manipulative behavior, validate your emotional responses against documented events, identify areas where you need better documentation, and assess the effectiveness of your protection strategies. The review system also includes reality checking, comparing your documented experiences with your current memories to see if your recollections have been influenced or distorted. This helps you maintain accurate memories even when others try to manipulate them. Regular reviews also help you recognize progress and healing. When you're in the middle of manipulation, it can feel like nothing is changing or improving. But documented evidence can show that you're getting stronger, setting better boundaries, and protecting yourself more effectively over time. Protection strategy. Schedule regular review sessions for your documentation. Start with weekly 30-minute reviews to identify patterns and validate your experiences. Use these reviews to strengthen your understanding of what's happening and plan better protection strategies. Your memories are your personal history, and they belong to you. No one has the right to steal, manipulate, or convince you that they never happened. The 9 documentation techniques I've shared today are your weapons against memory thieves. Use them to protect your sanity and preserve your truth. In the comments below, tell me, have you ever wished you had better documentation of manipulative behavior? Don't share identifying details, but let us know how documentation has helped you or how you plan to implement these techniques. Suppose this video gave you tools to protect your memories from manipulation. Share it with someone who might need these strategies. Knowledge is our best defense against those who steal our past to control our future. Next week, we're diving into mind control techniques used by cult leaders. We'll explore the most sophisticated psychological manipulation tactics ever developed and how to recognize them before you become a victim. Remember, your memories are valid, your experiences matter, and your history belongs to you. Document everything, trust your records, and never let anyone convince you your reality isn't objective. Hit subscribe and the bell icon to join our community of memory defenders. Like this video if it helped you protect your personal history, and I'll see you next week, where we'll continue building your defenses against psychological manipulation. Stay documenting, stay protected, and remember, your records are your most powerful allies in the battle for your mind.